The Wii U, a console not many people bought. Why? How did it become the lowest selling Nintendo console of all time, and does it deserve that status? In my own opinion, I can already say yes. It might even be one of the most unappealing consoles that has ever existed. Does it mean it's a bad console though? No, not at all. It had some pretty great games after all. But first, let's start with the most obvious thing first, the name. Somehow people always say it's the name's fault, but is that really true? To a degree, yes. I must say I don't understand how people who are somewhat into gaming can say they didn't understand that the Wii U is an actual new console. I have seen people on gaming forums saying they didn't know it was a new console. How? I mean, no offense, but those people probably wear Velcro shoes because they don't know how shoelaces work. A grandma not knowing what a Wii U is? Understandable. Someone who mostly only plays his sports games or the newest Call of Duty? Sure, understandable. But someone who is actually into more games than just the absolute mainstream games? No way. Especially when the Zelda tech demo went around and everyone went, damn, I hope the next Zelda looks like that. Obviously the tech demo would have never looked like that on the actual Wii U, let alone a Wii. At that point even those people should have realized it's a new console. I still really want a realistic looking Zelda again one day. That doesn't matter anyways, the Wii U would have failed even if it was called the Wii 2. This console was doomed from the start because even Nintendo themselves didn't know what they should do with this console. The Wii had the motion controls as its main gimmick that people easily understood, especially with Wii Sports. I can swing my own tennis racket, wow, that's amazing. I can use it as a gun, wow, that's cool. There were so many possibilities with the Wiimote plus Nunchuck, and tons of games made great use of them. Some not so much, and those ruined the image of motion controls to a degree, because to some people all motion controls suddenly felt like waggle waggle. This is the reason why the Wii hit the market like a bomb, not because it released with great games if you take a look at the release games, but because of the hype around the motion controls. Look at these release games, there's really not anything too great except for Twilight Princess, even though I love Trauma Santa and X-Ride Truck. Both of those didn't really set the world on fire with their sales sadly. The biggest reason for people to get the console was Wii Sports. That game made even parents who never played games before actually interested in them, and well, they didn't exactly stay around. Everyone suddenly wanted one, even if it had tons of dust on it shortly after already. People who never played games before prefer simple controls. A normal controller is pretty damn scary if you look at it. So many buttons, and nowadays many games make you press multiple buttons at the same time for so many different things. It's overwhelming, but on the Wii you swing it around and you have 4 main buttons, A and B on the Wiimote and C and Z on the Nunchuck. The Wii U though, it went back to having a more gamer-like controller again with its gamepad. After the Wii died, something else happened too though. Mobile games just started to become bigger and bigger. Every mom had Candy Crush on their phone, something everyone already had anyways. Everyone has a smartphone, almost everyone.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have
Everyone's got a
phones,
phone.
right?
Everyone can just play those games since they're free to play, except if you want to buy microtransactions. Why buy a console if I can do silly little games on my phones and I just have to flick and swipe my finger around on it? And that's where the casuals went to after the Wii, and they just stayed there, never to return to consoles really. The Wii U had zero pull for casuals like the Wii did. Most of them even already abandoned the Wii, so why would they have bought another Wii, this time the Wii 2? Casuals didn't care about the Wii anymore, they moved on. Most hardcore people didn't care about it either, because they felt Nintendo did them dirty. If you looked at gaming forums around that time, it wasn't really rare to see people being pissed at Nintendo for catering to the casuals and jumping ship because they thought games such as Wii Fit took away resources for the real games. Dummies. Nintendo was in this weird spot where nobody was really left for them to cater to. With the Wii U, they tried to somehow get the casuals back with games such as Wii Fit U and Wii Sports Club, but they also tried to impress the true gamers with extreme games such as funding Bayonetta 2 as an exclusive to the console, because otherwise it wouldn't exist. Neither really helped, but seeing people losing their mind about Bayonetta 2 was pretty fun and made it worth it. Some might even say there's still people out there who believe Bayonetta 2 will ever come to any other console that isn't a Nintendo console. So, what about the Wii U gamepad? What game takes advantage of it in a unique way? Mario Maker 1 makes it easier to build levels with its gamepad, even though you can use the Switch's touchscreen too, but it's a bit less comfy. Nintendo Land kinda has a few worthwhile minigames that have a decent use of it, and well, I can't think of any more from the top of my head. The DS had so many unique games with its dual or double screen, however you want to say it. It puts the Wii U to shame. Most developers were just, yep, we have no idea how to use it in an engaging way, so smash a map or an inventory onto the gamepad, nothing more, nothing less. That's even what Nintendo did most of the time. There's no true game that only worked with the gamepad that made any of the ports to the Switch or other consoles worse. The Wonderful 101, well, works great on any other console. Zombie U, well, that also got reworked and works without any extra gamepad stuff. Pikmin 3, yep, that too. Even Star Fox Zero would work without the gamepad if Nintendo would have wanted to port it. Sure, you can say the same about the Wii. Twilight Princess worked on the GameCube perfectly. Skyward Sword also got a port without motion controls if you want to on the Switch, but choosing the motionless controls gives a different feel to them. And then there's a genuine great game such as Red Steel 2 that could work on a normal controller but would just feel 60% lamer because doing the motions yourself is just so much better than you just pressing a normal button in those cases. With the Wii U gamepad, it's mostly just a bit of tedium that gets taken away from you. Let's imagine if Nintendo actually ported Wind Waker HD to the Switch. Would be lame to always have to open the menu if you played it on the Wii U because you were used to fast switching your stuff on the gamepad or quickly looking at the map without having to go into an extra menu when it comes to maps, because that's how the gamepad was mostly used. It sounds like I'm a total hater of it, which I am not. In this case, it's one of the better features of the Wii U. It's just not a selling point to anyone really. What reason did the Wii U give people to buy one at release? Zero. Absolutely zero. A bunch of ports in Nintendo's own offerings were Nintendo Land, no disrespect against Nintendo Land because it's really fun, but it never had the appeal of Wii Sports, and New Super Mario Bros. U, a game that looked exactly the same as on the Wii, but in a higher resolution. Come on Nintendo, you can't launch a console with that. Fun game, but it just does not cut it. Then a few ports like Epic Mickey 2 or Call of Duty Black Ops 2, but those are just ports. I could just play them still on my PlayStation 3, since they also released on there, and the graphics weren't that much better that it would make you wanna get a whole new console for it. The PlayStation 4 launch lineup also wasn't the most amazing one, and most of its ports could also still be played on the PlayStation 3, but if you look at graphics comparisons, you can already see a big jump and you would be set for the future with it too. And many people were already sucked into their console's ecosystem at this point. If all my friends play Call of Duty on the PlayStation 3, where will they go next? PlayStation 4 most likely, so if I get a Wii U for those games, I would be left out. The Wii U was a dire console. It couldn't even be called a drought at points, but an actual famine of video games. When I buy a video game console from Nintendo, I never expected to get the best third-party support back in the day personally. Those were always a big bonus point, and now with the Switch, and most likely also Switch 2, you can get many games on the Switch, even if those versions are kinda lacking in comparison most of the time. You can play Doom Eternal on the Switch, you can play The Witcher 3 on the Switch, and some other big third-party games. The question would be why, but that's not what this is about. On the Switch, it makes sense to port games since the Switch sold well right from the start and people wanted a piece of the pie. Other companies saw there's money to be made and it paid off for most of them. It was just a pretty awkward time for the Wii U for it regarding ports. It came out around a year before the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, so it still got some ports from the 7th generation of consoles, like Assassin's Creed 3 or Black Flag or Batman Arkham City, but when the new hot consoles appeared, that was the end of it. The gap between them and the Wii U was too big to make simple ports. Companies would have actually had to put effort into their ports. For a console that is failing, from a business perspective, it just made no sense. No company wanted to be the savior, because it made no sense to make it because money, and companies love money. There was no saving to do. It was impossible. Even if Bethesda, for example, just said, heck it, let's port Fallout New Vegas to the Wii U or Skyrim, that would surely help, right? No, it wouldn't have. The name, the specs of the console, and overall weak launch of it just poisoned the well too hard. Not even the biggest masterpieces of all time could have saved it. No real amount of third-party support would have helped it either. Even if Breath of the Wild came out earlier exclusively on the Wii U, it would have not moved the needle. At least not that much. This part of the video will obviously also be a bit of a subjective thing. I personally mostly buy Nintendo consoles for the exclusive Nintendo games, and obviously the Wii U had those. I'm not even really quite sure how to put this, but most of the games felt just fine. Nothing more, nothing less. No game blew my mind with the exception of Xenoblade X, because it's the best open world ever created, and I love Xenoblade, Donkey Kong, Tropical Freeze, and Breath of the Wild, if we count that one, which I wouldn't even really. Sure, it started as a Wii U game, but it launched on the Switch on the same day, and that's where I played it, and most people did. Mario's 3D World is the worst 3D Mario game for me. Smash Bros. 4 is Smash Bros. 4. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD are okay remasters. Yoshi's Woolly World was okay, the first Splatoon was fun, blah blah. There were a few other noticeable releases such as Captain Toad or Pikmin 3 or Bayonetta 2, but not much more. I think it would make sense to compare it to the Nintendo 64 in that regard, where also not that many games released on. But every single Nintendo game on the Nintendo 64 was basically a masterpiece, a milestone that made gaming what it is nowadays, while the Wii U games were mostly fine games. The problem was also Nintendo realized how quickly they had to get rid of this failure. They basically knew they gotta stop making games for this thing, fast. Push out all the good games we started on before we knew how badly this thing will flop, and then focus on the next thing. Don't even think about making another game for this thing, please. 3D World and Mario Kart 8 couldn't save this? Yep, then nothing can. Which led to one of the worst gaming years ever for Nintendo fans, 2016. At least on the Wii U side. This list is just pathetic. Basically every year of the Wii U was pathetic, with the exception of one Nintendo game maybe each 3 to 4 months. People are calling the last 2 years of the Switch a graveyard of games, then they have never seen a release list of each year on the Wii U. Nowadays, it doesn't even make sense anymore to turn your Wii U on. Basically anything can be played on the Switch, and if it can't, then Simu is your best friend, and because the online is dead. The idea of people who still played Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U with each other is just so cute somehow. Everyone switched over to the deluxe version with its new fancy DLC and all that, but these troopers never gave in to Nintendo's full price policy to rebuy the same game again and just kept on playing on their almost dead console. It's like those people who still use Windows 7 and give everything a bad review if it doesn't run on it anymore, but in cuter. Luckily you can always count on modders. For people who still want to use the Wii U or 3DS online, you can look up Pretendo. In the end, for me personally, it will forever be the Nintendo console I have played the least on, and that won't change. There's nothing on this console anymore that interests me. I couldn't believe my eyes when I googled how many retail games it had. It had 169 retail games in America. Obviously, there were more digital games, but most of those can also be found on Steam or other platforms. I can safely say I have played every single Wii U game I ever wanted to play. On basically any other console, I can always find new games I have never seen before and pull them onto my list of interesting looking games I want to play one day. When I look at the list of Wii U games, I just think, well, I've played all of them already, since there's so little. This console truly is that for me, with the exception of always coming back to Xenoblade X every once in a while, which I play on an emulator, but I give the Wii U the point for that. Monolith Soft and Nintendo, you know what you have to do. But that's just me. There's people out there who will think the Wii U was or is underrated, and while I don't agree with them, I'm fine with that. Back in the day, I also always had to defend myself when I said the Wii is my favorite Nintendo console. Everyone always pooping on it because of its motion controls and blah blah. It doesn't matter though. Your opinion is your opinion. Don't let your opinion get sour because of others. Keep fighting the good fight for your favorite thing. Most of the people who say it's their favorite console probably grew up with it though and have that special bond, or they really love Miiverse, one of the things I actually really miss. There's so many funny screens that came from it, and it saddens me that Nintendo basically got rid of all the social aspects on the Switch. You can't even send messages. Maybe one day we can see the return of something like that though. I doubt it, sadly. What about you? Did you enjoy your Wii U? Did you regret buying it, or did you never buy one? Let me know in the comments if you want to. This feels so fake to say Jesus. With that said, I will wish you a good night though, or a good day, or whatever fits your time zone. You know that will with the other things, so I don't have to spell it out since I hate saying those things. Nighty night.